suppose initially, it might take a couple of weeks or a couple of days maybe for it to really sink in. And I suppose we had such a good run at it. You know, we got the four in a row. We're going for the 5, and you know we couldn't complain too much about it because we had such a good run. Even the supporters, you know, were obviously behind us and were saying, look, you gave us 4 of the greatest years ever, and we got better the last hurl. But then I suppose as the days went on, the weeks went on, you know, it sunk in more, I suppose. And even at the All-Stars last year, you know, I remember seeing some highlights of the game and that really sunk in again, like, you know.
I remember looking at the few instances when the match came up on television throughout the winter and during the Christmas, and it's very, very hard to look at. You'd nearly walk out of the room, or you turn over the station, because it's just, it brings back all the hurt. And like last year, we were wondering, would we ever come back and win the All-Ireland again? They're the kind of thoughts that go through your mind. Are Tipperary going to dominate for the next few years, because they look like they were scoring goals and points for fun?
Croke Park's a very lonely place when you're looking up at the stand and the other team is getting the Lee McCarthy. You can do 2 things. You can kind of go away and hide, and you know, and that's it, we got beaten, you know, and try to forget about it, or else you can bottle that hurt and disappointment and bring it with you for the following year, and when you go back training in January, make sure that doesn't happen again. And that's what we did. And I always remember Liam Sheedy coming into the dressing room afterwards and saying, look, if you can bottle this hurt and disappointment, you know, you'll be a force to be reckoned with again. And he was true.
I obviously found out 10 days before the final that was me finished for the year, as regards Kilkenny anyway, at least. And you often hear people say to you that it's easier to play the match than watch it, you know, and particularly guys who maybe gone into management quickly as soon after playing, and it's definitely the case. You know, it's just so hard sitting up there in the stands and watching the lads, and you know, I suppose you become an expert. You know, you think you know what you should be doing or whatever.
You think about defeat, I suppose, much more than victory. You know, when you win an All-Ireland final, you know, it's great, you celebrate and everything else, and you go ahead. But I suppose, regardless, I mean, the club scene kicks in basically almost immediately after All-Ireland final. So, you know, straight away you're into your own club activity, and you're following the club and that, and so life goes on. But the pain of defeat does linger in the head, I suppose, and you do remember it. And it is a great motivating factor, without a shadow of a doubt. I suppose it's always in the cards that Tipperary were going to be in the All-Ireland final. The level they were playing at that time suggested that they were certainly going to be the team to beat in 2011. And you know, we were at a stage where we were being seriously challenged. You know, were we going to get to the levels, I suppose, maybe we had been at? So there was a huge challenge there for ourselves, and also it was a different scenario, I suppose, from the point of view of coming off, you know, winning an All-Ireland final, which we had been lucky enough to have done for the previous few years. So, you know, those things were different, I suppose, heading into the winter of 2010 and heading for 2011.
That hurt.
We really wanted to win the league final. Like you said, we got to it. We kind of stumbled to it in lots of ways. We weren't particularly convincing in some of the matches, but you know, it was a good, decent achievement to get to the league final, and Dublin on the day were certainly much better than us. You know, you could say we were short some decent players, but that's part and parcel of it, you know, so that wasn't an excuse.
It was embarrassing for us, and it was definitely a day that we drew a line in the sand and said, right, you know, we're going back, we have to have a look at ourselves, the whole panel, the whole management, and we just went at it with a different approach and a different attitude. And it was the kick in the backside that we needed at that day in the league final. We meant to be wearing the Kilkenny jersey with pride and honour, and we weren't doing that. You know, we actually embarrassed. We let down the people of Kilkenny. I mean, there was no drive in the team. There was no bit of pride in it at all, and we totally let ourselves down.
That really refocused us then after the league final, that we weren't where we, I suppose, thought we were. Like, we stumbled through the league. We might put on a great performance for 20 minutes, and then we'd fall asleep there for maybe the rest of the half.
We just didn't get going at all that day, and as you said, it showed where we were at, really. You know, it actually was reflective of our league campaign, and it showed how good Dublin were and how strong they were. And they put on an exhibition the last 10 minutes. You know, they got great points from all angles, you know.
It was a hiccup certainly along the way, and we had to sit down. Obviously, we sat down with the players, and you know, there was no big witch hunt or anything like that in the slightest. You know, we realised that what we were about, and we spoke about it, and we just put our heads down and continued to try and improve as much as we possibly could.
second or third time we'd lost in Croke Park in a number of years, so to think that we were Croker chokers I thought was going over the top a bit. To be honest, it's all down to the individual. Like, he went in one ear of mine and out the other.
It was an insult, and I think that may have drove us on a bit more as well. Just, I suppose, to prove to these people, like, you know, that we're not chokers and we're here to stay.
At the same time, I suppose there was a certain curiosity and wonder about whether the team was genuinely slipping. You know, there was that sense that, you know, maybe we've seen the best of this team. And I would say there was concern even in our own supporters throughout the county that I wonder where we are. You know, are we going to be able to get back and maybe get things properly going for the championship? But certainly, I suppose the media reaction was, you know, to a sense, sort of, they made a big thing of the defeat, and it was a big defeat, and that's fair enough. But all of that, I suppose, maybe spurred the lads on a bit as well.
We take it as part and parcel of it. Like, some days you get praised and some days you get criticised, but I suppose that headline was probably, you know, it was a bit silly really, like Croker chokers, because of what we were after winning. Like, maybe we were going through a bad run, but I don't think you could call us Croker chokers. Like, you could say maybe that we're on our way down or whatever like that, and maybe you can back up that with evidence, but it's very hard to, I suppose, back up a statement like that with any real evidence.
We weren't reading anything into the fact that we'd lost 2 matches. It just so happened that was the way it fell. Obviously, the media were writing something else into it, you know, in particular, I suppose, having lost the club final in between, you know, and being from the Kilkenny club, you know, people were starting to make assumptions as regards, you know, the Kilkenny and early decline. We were confident enough that that wasn't the case.
If ever there was a test of champions, this was it. An embarrassing loss to Dublin had the team questioning themselves and critics questioning if they could bounce back. Now it was time to come up with the answers.
We went out that day and
management as the Leinster Championship campaign was about to kick into gear.
Realistically, if we had to lose by 2 or 3 points that day, we probably would have said, look, things are going okay, you know, we're not doing too bad, we're still doing all right, and not to be too panicky about it. But that was a serious wake-up call. To be beaten by that much in the league final up in Croke Park, you know, it was a very tough stake, and it just, obviously, it just woke us all up. And we're playing Wexford, like we're due to play Wexford in a couple of weeks down Wexford Park, and you know, that was on our sights straight away. And like, down Wexford Park is so dangerous down there, you know, you just don't know what to expect.
I suppose it probably took a lot of pressure off us, because I remember at the time people were saying that Kilkenny are stumbling, but they're still winning, they're still showing they're a good team. But I think after the league final, people started to think maybe Kilkenny are actually, you know, they're not so good anymore, and they're on the way down maybe rather than up. So it probably just took all the pressure off us that we could maybe train harder ourselves under the radar, and it seemed to work out that way. We didn't plan it that way, but it seemed to work out that way in the end.
it was just a matter of knuckling down, targeting certain areas that we felt we weren't performing in, that we needed to, and working on that to make sure that once the championship came around, that we were ready, and we were ready to hit the ground running.
What happened in front of our eyes happened in front of our eyes. You know, there was no question at all of us going out and saying, sure, look, the result of this match doesn't matter. The result of this match mattered. We wanted to win it without a shadow of a doubt. So we had to really kind of take stock of where we were and look at things and, you know, be very, very honest with ourselves. It would have been pointless to say, look, we're okay, we're just maybe not really ready for the championship yet. But the championship was creeping up, and we had to be very, very clear about where we were. And it certainly sort of was a serious awakening for all of us, I think, as to the levels we were at that stage.
It was brilliant atmosphere down there. You know, I think it was a huge success. I think moving the early provincial matches down to a home venue for one of the other teams, because you got a huge crowd, and again, that's what the players love. They love playing in front of full house.
They finished the league very well, and you know, we were aware of the challenge that lay ahead going to Wexford Park. Serious tough challenge definitely going down there, and so we had to be really ready for that match, and we prepared well for it.
It was our first probably game as a team maybe as well, because Richie Bauer had injuries all year long too, so it was his first time, I suppose, you know, in centre forward. You know, we had Henry back.
Remember that day down Wexford, I wasn't playing the same day, but I was part of the crowd there that day, and it was absolutely electric. And remember Paul Murphy and Paddy Hogan were on the two wings that day, and remember I was there, like, just, you know, you're worried, like, can you get back? And you'd want to find some form very quickly. So that'll tell you the kind of performances that the lads are putting in. There was a lot of lads worried, you know what I mean, can you get back into the team?
There were 4 new lads for us, and you know, it gave us a great injection of freshness and use in that. And Paul Murphy was great on the night, as was David and the other lads. So, you know, and it gave everyone, you know, on the panel that said, look, you know, no one is sure of the place here. I was taken off the same day I was bad, you know, and like, that was great, like, because, you know, you go back training, you'd be mad to get back in it because you don't want to lose your place.
We hurled well in patches, and we didn't in other patches. You know, it was a bit of a, I suppose, stop-start thing, and as well, I suppose that's the nature of it, is you're trying to build the whole time in terms of your sharpness and that. But the one thing that has to remain constant is the hunger, you know, and the drive, the willing to battle, and that was certainly a battle. You know, there was a period in that match now where, as you said, it was going to go one way or the other, and, you know, in fairness, we've been in a situation like that before, and we knew what was required, and the lads stood up, you know, and we got a couple of vital scores that put the bit of daylight between us, and we obviously drove on from there then.
Obviously, we were expecting it to be very, very close, and we were never targeting, you know, winning in any way comfortably at all, and we were realising that this was going to be, we had to be prepared to battle it out until the 72nd, 3rd minute, whatever it was, and, you know, the genuine honesty and the competitive spirit was there. So when then we got the opportunity to take a few chances, and we took them. So yeah, the lads had played very well on that night.
Funnily enough, in the space of, what was it, 4 weeks or whatever it is, we suddenly had 4 or 5 young lads, bringing the average age down, you know, and pushing hard for places. That's, you know, I mean, again, that's why I suppose we weren't reading a whole lot into it, because we knew the lads were there busting for the chance to get in, and as you know, as Brian always says, you know, that if you get the jersey, it's up to you to hold on to it. And I think no one demonstrated that better than Paul Murphy.
So Kilkenny's championship was up and running. The win against Wexford had not completely settled doubts people may have had in the wake of the league final defeat.
Dublin in the Leinster final, because anytime you're getting beaten by your team previously, like, that sharpens their focus fiercely. No matter what you're playing, if someone beats you the day before, like, you can't wait to play them again. So playing Dublin in the Leinster final was what we needed.
Just even going back to the Welsh Cup, you know, we lost the Welsh Cup to them up in Parnell, and we played in a league match then, and we actually drew that game. And I suppose, again, we drew it, but realistically, we should have been bet that day, you know. We got 2 kind of handy enough goals, so we did. So Dublin probably should have bet us that day again. League final, they bet us well. I don't know, was it 9 or 10 points? And so we knew, like, Dublin are a very, very good team, and we knew coming into the Leinster final that these are good, and we have to, you know, get a bit of respect back here. So we do. If we lose that game, you know, I don't know where we would have been after that.
Brian really hadn't to do much to focus the minds after obviously the league final, and even earlier on they beat us in the Walsh Cup and we drew them in the league, so really they had the upper hand on us on the year so far. I didn't really sense there was something big coming. I sensed that there was a huge focus on this game, and lads were keen to, you know, get a crack at Dublin. There had been a lot written and talk about Dublin, that, you know, they were coming for us, and, you know, that maybe we were going the opposite direction. So we wanted to set the record straight, and we were, you know, I knew that we were going to get on well that day, and we were going to test Dublin. It was just going to be interesting to see if Dublin could live with.
There were certain aspects of the Wexford match that we were very happy with, in terms of the fight and the hunger that we demonstrated, but obviously there were certain areas where we knew we had to improve on a bit of sharpness, you know, and some guys wouldn't have been overly happy with their own performances that day, and you know, the kind of guys they are, you know, you want to watch out the second day, you know, if you're going to have to mark them. The
challenge was on our doorstep, really. You know, Dublin had proven a short time previously that they were certainly on that day superior to us. So, I mean, the gauntlet was thrown down to us, and we had to react to it and respond. And, you know, we knew it was going to be very, very difficult, and we knew it had to be played very, very well to get the better of them.
Yeah, there was a bit of fear there that day, and like, as I said, if we to lose, there have been more questions asked, you know, like we're heading in the backdoor system for the first time since, I think, 2005 maybe, so it was a crucial game for Kilkenny.
Everything was set up for a titanic struggle between the reigning Leinster champions and the National League winners. The hurling world waited.
You could even see it in train. scores on the backs, and we were finding it hard to cope with them even in training. So it was no surprise to us that we started coming into form, and definitely the Leinster final was a big booster for us.
We knew it was going to be very, very difficult, and we knew it had to be played very, very well to get the better of them. But we did. We had a good performance, and we got on top, and we drove things forward, and you know, it was a very decent performance on that day.
It is a Leinster title at the end of the day, and I know a lot of us have a number of them in that, but still, any time you win a Leinster final and you're champions of Leinster, it's great, it's huge, and more also important to that, it gives you a good run. You know, you don't have to go through any back doors or anything like that.
For us, it's still a massive achievement to win the Leinster final. It's not our end goal by any means, but it's still, you know, it's one of the goals along the way, is that you want to win your provincial championship. So yeah, it was brilliant to win it, and it was obviously great on a personal note then to have the opportunity to lift the cup on behalf of the lads.
Rumours of Kilkenny's demise had certainly been greatly exaggerated.
We were very lucky not to get the rebound off the beating they got from Tipperary. Like, you know, God, we were quite unfortunate to draw against Waterford next, because you know, if you get beaten in a game like that, like, you know, you're going to be so clued in for the next day. And just like a lot of those Waterford players had to individually prove themselves and prove to the Waterford supporters, like, you know, that they are good. And I suppose they owed the Waterford supporters a good game, and that's what they gave them. And they just literally blew Galway out of the waters.
To be fair to him, the Munster final it was a freak match in terms of there was no way they were 21 points worse than Tipperary. We were under no illusions like that. You know, they were coming up, you know, to restore some pride in the jersey, and we were going to have to be ready for that, you know, ready for the backlash, I suppose. And that's something we would have discussed, you know, is that, you know, that to make sure we had our eye on the ball and to be prepared for this.
We definitely were very wary of Waterford, because they beat us in league final back in 2007, and we've played them every year nearly in the league, and some years we win, some years they win. So we never take Waterford for granted, because you take them for granted at your peril.
Brian Cody has often said that All-Ireland semi-finals are all about winning. The performance, for the most part, doesn't matter. Kilkenny got the result they wanted against the Daisha.
A perfect performance. You know, we kind of got scores early enough in the game to give us a bit of a gap, and Waterford certainly threatened to come back, and you know, we weren't particularly good in the last 20 minutes, and the game sort of filtered out in lots of ways. There was a lot of wayward shooting and bad use of the ball and that.
I don't think we hurled that well that day. I know we won, but like in the first half we hurled in patches, and then the second half, you know, we had that lead of maybe 4 or 5 points, but we drove some terrible wides. Took an awful lot of wrong options when, you know, there was a chance on or a pass on, and all year long you're trying not to think about Tipperary in a league match or something like that, but you know, it's in your mind all year long, and here you are in an All-Ireland semi-final, and you're that close to maybe getting to an All-Ireland, another crack at Tipperary. You know, and lads get a bit edgy and a bit nervous and start taking the wrong options and shooting from when they shouldn't be, laying it off to someone else. I think an element of that crept in.
I just remember, you know, the midfielders and the half-hours, we were coming back too deep and we were drawing Waterford onto us. So essentially we were making it easy for them, because for the last 10-15 minutes it seemed we were just poking balls up to Waterford backs who were standing on their own, and they were clearing balls back down and on top of us, you know, looking for scores, and you know, we didn't make life easy for ourselves.
We just kept hitting balls down, probably stupidly, you know. We were hitting it to Waterford lads. We weren't giving our forwards, I suppose, any advantage, and probably hitting it without thinking. So it was definitely, I suppose, a big learning curve for us after that match.
Without a doubt, the guys had in their mind from the beginning of the year that they wanted to get back to the All-Ireland final. That's, you know, there's no doubt there, and maybe the fact we were 10-15 minutes now away from, you know, being back in that final, I think guys' minds maybe start to shift into the final.
A win's a win, and that's what we got that day. But we had a lot of work to do, you know. And I suppose if we had to hammer Waterford, you know, people would have been talking about Kilkenny as in their back, and they've All-Ireland sewn up in that. So we're probably coming under the radar a small bit, which was a nice way to come in too.
I suppose semi-final day, it's absolutely, the result is everything. Just get to the final is deep prized for that, you know. So we were obviously very, very happy to get there, but we were aware of the fact that a performance like that wouldn't be nearly good enough to win an All-Ireland final.
They were bruised, battered and bloody, but Kilkenny had learned lessons from the build-up 12 months before. Two things dominated the build-up to the 2010 All-Ireland hurling final. Kilkenny's drive for 5 and the Cats' injury concerns, particularly Henry Shefflin's knee. Preparations for the 2011 final were to be much more low-key.
Some of the players probably felt, you know, the sense of maybe history and that was weighing there, but for me it's just another All-Ireland final, which we wanted to win, obviously, and there was the same opposition there again as the previous year. So, I mean, obviously there's decent, very decent rivalry between Kilkenny and Tipperary, neighbouring counties, and traditional rivalry is there as well. So obviously we would have really wanted to win the game. Our training was, you know, there was a huge interest in it and that. And there were the distractions of, you know, injuries coming up to the game, obviously with Henry and John Tennyson and that, and would it play, would it not play.
The train sessions before the All-Ireland, you know, we're getting huge crowds in, we're getting 7,000 or 8,000, 9,000 in for training, and that was a bit disruptive, to be honest, you know.
The lads made a conscious decision, I think, this year, just for the first time ever, I suppose, just to have 2 or 3 closed door sessions, you know, and Fearne Bryan is very much, you know, he's nothing to hide and he opens the doors, but I think it was just to give the players a bit of breathing space.
In hindsight, looking back now and seeing the way this year went and our preparations, that, you know, they were worlds apart, really. You know, this year was more low-key. Lads were really focused on the job in Tipperary and the All-Ireland. And looking back in comparison to that year, you know, I suppose things just got out of hand, and, you know, it wasn't down to anyone's fault that night.
Well, it's the final most people predicted at the start of the year, and now it's come to pass. Will reigning champions Tipperary or last year's beaten...
I was certain that, you know, they were going to perform. I was certain they were going to go out and play at a decent level. No idea, obviously, that whether that would be good enough to win the game or not, but I knew that we were going to be competitive.
It would have been naive or stupid or whatever you want to call it, not to have looked back at the previous year and had a look at what went wrong or how did we get opened up. And the lads did it, you know, and we did as players as well, you know. I suppose we all had a contribution to it.
Brian said it to me a couple of weeks before it. He said that, look, we're maybe thinking of man marking Lark Corbett, you know, we're maybe looking at you. At the time I was saying, what am I going to do? I'm marking Lark Corbett here. But I suppose it was a great compliment and boost myself that, look, Brian is after asking me, you know, so it kind of gave me confidence as well.
On the sideline, anybody thinks you'll be a huge influence in the game is wrong, you know. I mean, you can make a call here and make a call there and might not work out, but essentially the players take over, absolutely, and yeah, went ahead, but we were strong, we were competitive, we were decent, we were sensible, and we were clever with the way we were playing the game. So, and the concentration, like I said, was a huge thing. So, all I could see was that things were going at a decent level for us.
The first 10-15 minutes, it was working well for us. I think, you know, we were getting the scores on the other side, so we were, and we're kind of just driving on from there and getting more confident. And as players, I suppose, if you're getting the scores, players come together, and there's the team spirit there just drives on from there.
If we give these Tipperary backs and more sort of half-back line time, no back in the country is going to stop the forwards if the supply ball is going in good. So we just put emphasis on putting pressure on their backs. You know, typical Tipperary, they came back at us after we getting a start. I think it was 5 or 6-0 really, you know, and we got the goal for half-time.
Richie Hogan takes the pass from Shefflin. Michael Fennelly tearing up from midfield, and Fennelly scores.
Eddie got the ball, and even though he was 50-60 yards away from goal, like, straight away, the only thing he had in mind was, I'm going for it, you know. He saw the space and that was it, head down, and he was gone.
This is Eddie Brennan sprinting through the middle. Nobody can stay with him. Brennan bearing down on goal, slips the pass to Richie Hogan. Oh, what a goal! What about that for a finish from Kilkenny's Richie Hogan?
Next thing you know, things opened up for him, you know, and as you said, the perfect pass to Richie Hogan, and it was in, you know. The lads were just, you know, hungry, just wanted the ball, and they were going to do it, and nothing was going to stand in their way, you know.
The last 50 minutes, John Ryan was catching balls, and I think actually he got taken off then within a couple of minutes to go, which we were probably happy enough with that, so we were at the time. But we knew they'd come at us at some stage, and unfortunately enough, it was the last 10 minutes, you know, when the legs were getting a bit dead, and, you know, you're getting tired. But everyone just hung in there.
I suppose under severe pressure pressure coming up to the end. And I suppose Owen Larkin got a vital point, Henry got a vital point, Colin Fennelly, like at various times TJ Reid got a great point coming on. So it was definitely very important that we were tipping over the points at that time, because Tip were putting us under severe pressure at the back. But I think they probably needed a goal at that stage, because the time was ticking away. And I remember Pa Burke got through, and Noel Hickey, you know, you wouldn't hear much of it, but Noel Hickey made a vital hook at that stage.
There's no point in worrying, you know, and you try and just keep a focus on it and keep a clear head, I suppose, if you can about it. But certainly absolutely aware that 3 points in hurling, 6 points, 7, 8 points in hurling is nothing, and a ball can break anyway, and suddenly a goal and things change. And of course Tipperary were in a position where they could have won the game, but our response was good. You know, we kept competing well, and we kept creating a few chances, even though we probably could have had a few more scores. We didn't, but we kept creating, and you know, the lads finished strongly.
Our forwards had been getting the scores all year, and we were confident if we get enough ball into them, that scores will come off it, and they did. You know, Colin Fennelly came out and won a great ball and put over the bar, and Henry, the other side, took a bad belt on the leg and put over the bar.
Obviously the key one, or the big one, was when Larky got the insurance point at the very end. You know, it's typical Larky. You know, he went up with 2 or 3 defenders, and you just see him hearing off with the ball in his hand. You know, he's brilliant at that. You know, and no better man to put it between the posts then.
So the Cats are hurling's top dogs once again. They overcame disappointment, despair and defeat to win back Liam McCarthy. They answered questions from both within and from outside the panel as they reasserted their place at the top of hurling's pecking order. And they showed their insatiable appetite for success has not been satisfied.
And what was the feeling like when the full-time whistle went?
It was unbelievable now, yeah. That's why one of the most games I remembered, you know, with the final whistle going, and just a feeling of relief and satisfaction, and yes, we have done this, and just I suppose to stop Tipperary, you know, because they were the favourites, and you know, obviously winning the year before that, you know, we wanted to get maybe a bit of respect back and bring Liam home.
You just lose yourself for those few minutes. I remember the first lad I met was JJ, and you know, you're just hugging there for about, you know, maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds, and you're just hoping that this feeling would stay forever. And it was definitely just one of these greatest feelings that you could ever have.
To have had the honour then to go up and pick up Liam McCarthy on behalf of the lads was just, you know, it's you know, it's the stuff of dreams. You know, it's something I'll always treasure.
There was a serious challenge put in front of us this time, and you know, to try and get back from the previous year to win it again, you know, having suffered a serious defeat in the league final as well, really was testing us, and really was a sheer massive challenge for everybody concerned. And there was a sense of great delight and happiness and everything else around it, and you know, it probably was the most satisfying of them all.
It's really sweet when you lose an All-Ireland and come back the following year, and you know, it's especially when the question marks after last year, after losing All-Ireland, was this the end of the team, and then after the league final, you know, the whole chokers thing and all that, and then just to come and win an All-Ireland and have no question marks that we're the best team in the country last year.
We hadn't tasted defeat in a while, and then obviously reality struck then, you know, in 2010 when we lost the All-Ireland for the first time in 4 or 5 years, and that brought guys back to reality, and it was a feeling that we didn't like, you know. And as well, you know, I suppose some guys, you know, stuff was wrote about some guys, and you know, they take that personally, and it just, you know, the loss in itself. So to come back the following year, you know, and to put in the performance that we did, and suppose for ourselves, you know, to show that we're not finished, we're still there. It definitely, you know, it definitely was the sweetest one.
Final day is only the second most important day, of course, of the year for yourself, because given that this is going out on the 30th of December, an hour ago you would have been on the altar about to get married, so congratulations on that for what you've just done. I suppose this is the most important day of the year for you.
Oh, it is, of course. Can't wait for it now, but I suppose when this is going out, it'll be already done, and hopefully it'll be, I suppose, the greatest day. I was talking a few minutes ago, I suppose, about the great feeling, I suppose, after winning All-Ireland, so hopefully I'll be saying the same about today.